Divine Oracle, Unwritten Words Behind My Novel. The Historical Blueprint of a Great Argead Saga, ALEXEIN. Volume 1, Telesias, The War Dance. By Makāula Nakae. Audio Essay. Episode 20, Eurynoe, Daughter of Amyntas III of Macedon. Welcome back to Divine Oracle, Unwritten Words Behind My Novel. I am Makāula Nakae. Today, we are diving into an absolute historical blackout to reconstruct the life of a princess who has been completely flattened, distorted, and ultimately abandoned by classical history. Princess Eurynoe of Macedon. Eurynoe was a prominent princess of the Argead dynasty during a particularly bloody and tumultuous period in the 4th century BCE. She was the daughter of King Amyntas III and his primary queen, Eurydice. This made her a full sister to 3 future Macedonian kings: Alexander II, Perdiccas III, and the man who would revolutionize the ancient world, Philip II. She also had half-brothers from her father's secondary marriage to Argead. Yet, despite her central position in the royal nursery, her historical footprint is almost entirely overshadowed by the famous men of her family. In Justin's hyper-dramatized Athenian Mime Theater, Princess Eurynoe's life reaches a sudden, cold narrative dead end, the exact moment she exposes her mother's alleged affair to her father. Once she plays her pivotal role as the loyal whistleblower who saves King Amyntas III from a palace coup, Justin completely drops her from the text. He never mentions her again, leaving her ultimate fate a total blank. The plot device disappearance. In terms of pure soap opera storytelling, Justin only utilized Eurynoe to serve a single thematic purpose: to show how unnatural and wicked Queen Eurydice I supposedly was, and to set up the tragic blindness of King Amyntas III, who spared his wife out of mercy. Once Eurynoe delivers that singular plot twist, her theatrical utility is over. Justin never tells the audience if Eurydice took revenge on her daughter. He never explains what happened to her marriage with Ptolemy of Aloros after the affair was exposed. She completely vanishes from his subsequent chapters, detailing the bloody rise of Ptolemy, the assassinations of her brothers, and the ascension of Philip II. Outside of Justin's deeply flawed Roman text, Eurynoe does not exist as a primary actor. The consensus among modern Macedonian historians, including leading scholars on royal Argead women like Elizabeth Donnelly Carney, is that Princess Eurynoe almost certainly existed as a real, historical daughter of King Amyntas III and Queen Eurydice. However, there is a massive difference between her historical existence and the specific melodramatic actions Justin attributes to her. Look at the fiction versus the reality. The specific cloak and dagger story, where Eurynoe is forced to marry her mother's lover Ptolemy to cover up an affair, uncovers a secret assassination plot and dramatically exposes it to her father, is highly regarded by modern scholars as pure apocryphal fiction. This sensational storyline was heavily drawn from hostile Southern Greek or Athenian Mime Theater, designed to portray the Macedonian court as a barbaric, unhinged soap opera, ruled by chaotic feminine lust. Mechanically, it is highly unlikely that a young princess would be given access to the highly confidential operational details of a palace regicide plot. Yet, modern historians accept Eurynoe as a genuine member of the Argead tree for 2 primary reasons. First, look at the marriage alliance structure. In the brutally strategic world of the Pella court, dynastic marriages were the ultimate currency. Before Ptolemy of Aloros launched his coup against Alexander II, he was a powerful noble who needed to find a way into the royal family line to build his legitimacy. Arranging a marriage between Ptolemy and a genuine royal princess like Eurynoe fits the exact clinical pattern of Argead realpolitik. Second, there is a complete lack of contradiction regarding her birth. While alternative sources like Diodorus Siculus or the speech archives of Aeschines focus entirely on the political maneuvers of her brothers and her mother, they never contradict the genealogical reality that Amyntas III left behind a daughter. Ancient historical records frequently suffered from a gender blackout, routinely omitting the names and everyday lives of royal women, unless they committed a highly public political act or a crime. When our scour the entire surviving corpus of classical antiquity, the absolute cold reality is this: there is zero narrative about Eurynoe's life before or after Ptolemy of Aloros. She possesses no independent biography, no alternative legends, and no mentions in any surviving fragments outside of Justin's brief, salacious narrative. In the real-world historical archives, Eurynoe exists purely as a single line in a genealogical tree and a political counter on a diplomatic chessboard, reconstructing the blank canvas. For a historical creator mapping out the later volumes of ALEXEIN, this total academic blackout is our greatest narrative goldmine. By understanding the cold reality of Argead dynastic marriages, we can logically reconstruct what her life must have looked like before and after her intersection with Ptolemy. Let us trace her life before Ptolemy, where she existed as the currency of Pella. Before she was a wife, Eurynoe was a high-stakes political asset. Argead kings practiced polygamy to build internal and external alliances, which meant the royal court was a ruthless nest of competing mothers, rival half-brothers, and ambitious local barons. As the only recorded daughter of King Amyntas III and Queen Eurydice, Eurynoe's early years would have been tightly controlled. She wasn't raised for romance, she was raised to be given away. Her value lay entirely in her capacity to bind a dangerous nobleman to her father's throne. Growing up, she would have keenly felt the cultural divide between her mother's proud, highly cultured Lancestian heritage and the lowland Argead military elite. She likely grew up watching her mother deploy razor-sharp diplomacy just to keep her family from being wiped out by internal usurpers or the terrifying Illyrian war machine under King Bartolus. Then came the crisis point, becoming Ptolemy's bride. When King Amyntas III died around 370 BCE, the fragile stability of Macedonia collapsed. Her eldest brother, Alexander II, took the throne but was almost immediately assassinated by Ptolemy of Aloros, a powerful and predatory prince from a rival branch of the royal house. This is where the real history completely destroys Justin's narrative of illicit bedroom lust. Ptolemy did not marry into the family because of a secret affair. He married because of pure structural necessity. To solidify his grip on the Pella court and pacify the lowland loyalists who viewed him as a murderous usurper, Ptolemy had to integrate himself into the immediate ruling line. He did this by marrying Princess Eurynoe. At the exact same time, to prevent an immediate civil war and protect her two remaining young sons, Perdiccas and Philip, Queen Mother Eurydice forged a desperate alliance with Ptolemy. Imagine Eurynoe's intense psychological trauma during this period. She was legally handed over and forced to share a bed with the very man who had just orchestrated the butchery of her eldest brother, while her mother cooperated with the killer out of sheer dynastic survival. For 3 years, from 368 to 365 BCE, Eurynoe lived as the wife of the regent of Macedonia. Then the clock ran out. The moment her younger brother Perdiccas III reached the age of majority, he launched a sudden clinical domestic counter-purge. He did not use lawyers or courtrooms. Perdiccas assassinated Ptolemy of Aloros himself to reclaim absolute executive control of the Argead crown. Eurynoe became a widow, and her husband's death plunged her into the ultimate historical blackout. The absolute silence of history regarding Eurynoe after this assassination points toward 3 distinct narrative paths for our upcoming volumes. Path A, the collateral damage. In the sheer, chaotic violence of a Macedonian palace coup, lines are drawn in blood. If Eurynoe had grown loyal to Ptolemy over those 3 years, or if Perdiccas viewed her as permanently compromised by her marriage to the usurper, she may have been quietly eliminated alongside her husband to completely erase Ptolemy's faction from the palace. Path B, the regifted pawn. In the ancient world, a royal widow was rarely allowed to remain single if she still possessed political value. Perdiccas III or later Philip II have instantly remarried her to a powerful Upper Macedonian baron or a foreign king, such as a Thracian or Illyrian prince, to secure a brand new frontier treaty. She would have been packed off to a foreign court, her name erased from Pella's domestic records. Path C, the cloistered matriarch. She may have spent the remainder of her days living a deeply isolated, silent life within the women's quarters of the palace or sacred sanctuary. Trapped as the widow of a usurper and the sister of the kings who killed him, she would have been a living ghost in Pella, watching her younger brother Philip to return from Thebes, innovate the Sarissa phalanx, and march Macedonia toward a global empire. The takeaway for ALEXEIN: the absolute blankness of her life isn't a limitation, it is our ultimate canvas. Justin tried to turn her into a cheap plot device, But the real historical structure allows us to write her as the ultimate tragic survivor of the early Argead power games. For the narrative architecture of ALEXEIN, Eurynoe will be handled as a very real, flesh and blood human being who was completely objectified and used as a political pawn by the men around her. Instead of treating her as Justin's cartoonish whistleblower, her true drama in ALEXEIN stems from her harrowing position as an authentic Argead princess caught in a forced marriage to an ambitious older regent. She's used as a human shield to bridge the lowland and mountain factions and left entirely isolated in the palace when her brother Perdiccas III eventually brings down the iron axe of vengeance on her husband's neck. In the ALEXEIN saga, Eurynoe defies the tragic isolation of history. She supports her family continuously through the shadows of the court. For deep insight into how royal women navigated these brutal palace dynamics, classical studies frequently explore the later, harrowing life of Alexander the Great's niece, Ada Eurydice. Her recorded life provides excellent historical context for how Argead princesses were consistently caught in the crossfire of dynastic warfare, matching the exact political environment Eurynoe endured generations earlier. Tune in for our next daily drop tomorrow as we continue to dissect the bloodlines of antiquity. ALEXEIN, a great Argead saga. Volume 1, Telesias, the War Dance. Unearth, the ultimate historical drama. We are releasing a brand new episode every single day until the epic conclusion of Volume 1. Each chapter delivers a tight, hyper-focused 15 to 45-minute hit of cinematic historical drama, the perfect daily plunge into the ancient world. Watch the cinematic video trailer. Listen to the full saga now. Bookmark Volume 1, Telesias playlist. Volume 2, Sacred Band playlist, and bookmark Divine Oracle, Volume 1 playlist. Subscribe to follow the rise of the Argead dynasty. Thumbs up to help push our Vanguard through the algorithm's gauntlet. Speech bubble comment below. Was Queen Mother Eurydice's decision to align with Ptolemy of Aloros after the assassination of her eldest son an act of sheer political survival to shield her remaining children from the Upper Macedonian pretenders? Or was it a cold, calculating consolidation of power that permanently stained her legacy in the eyes of the lowland loyalists? Let me know your structural breakdowns in the comments below.